afternoon, good morning to some of you. It's my great pleasure to open our first SHHA In-Depth webinar in 2025. The topic is really close to my heart, and I hope it's going to be at the heart of the narrative of our sector. Longevity. I truly believe that investing in longevity is a game changer in a way how we think about aging, how we think about the future of senior living and senior care. When almost 3 years ago, we've met with Nick Palmarini at MIPIM and he was presenting his City of Longevity concept, I knew it's going to be big and I knew it's going to be impactful. So today with the fantastic experts, we would like to share with you the bunch of inspirations around the topic on longevity and its impact on the real estate industry. And at the intersection of real estate, technology, AI, design, architecture, we're going to talk about how we can reshape and redefine the products, the services, and businesses that we are creating for the future generation of older adults. So enjoy the webinar. I'm sure you're going to be inspired. The floor is yours. Thank you, Richard.
Thanks very much, Sylvia. Really interesting topic, I think, looking at longevity, and we've got a super panel here for you. So thanks very much in advance to all of the speakers for sharing your views. Let's just do a quick round of introductions, I think, for the moment. So let's start with you, Nick. Thanks very much for joining us. Let's start with you, and then we'll move around all the speakers. And it's a brief introduction of yourself, Nick, and then we'll talk to all of the speakers. So Nick, over to you.
Well, I'm Nick Palmarini. I'm the director of the UK National Innovation Centre for Aging. We're based in northeast of England. I am also the co-founder of the Edelman Longevity Lab. It's a pleasure to be here. Amazing friends around here. We're working with many of them. It's such a pleasure to share about the topic. Back to you, Richard.
Great, thanks very much. And Han, thanks very much for joining us from the States. So for those who don't know, maybe a quick introduction of yourself.
I'm Han Brown, the founder of AI50. I develop large language models for adults over 50. And my work is very personal with personal experience in caregiving. And it's shown me that real estate and the spaces and technology can transform care delivery. So now I develop AI tools to help senior living operators to turn insights or paperwork into insights and providing staff more time to do what matters the most.
Yeah, and it's going to be really interesting, I think, to pick that up in the second half of the session today. Mark, over to you.
Sure. Great to be here. So I'm Mark Whitcroft. I'm an entrepreneur. I have a number of software businesses, but I'm here in the capacity today of having worked with Nick and the team at the UK's National Innovation Centre for Aging. We did some research into older adults' decisions in later life around where they live, whether they stay in their existing home or whether they move, and how they think about their property and their property wealth as it relates to funding their retirement. We then built some digital software assets, one of which is soon to pilot with the UK's largest retirement group on the finance side in February this year.
Great, thanks. And Francesco, interesting to get your perspectives as well. So, but a quick introduction from you, just so that everybody knows, I guess, kind of which part of the industry you're from.
Okay, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm Francesco Cocco. I'm a senior consultant in senior housing and longevity and design for all. I'm based in Barcelona, which is an interesting thing because I had the opportunity to study the social housing model in Barcelona and also the new project in public spaces that's so really related with how we can have a healthy longevity. And I had this collaboration also with NICA as a City of Longevity Ambassador.
Great, thanks very much. Ron, over to you.
Yes, well, great to be here. I'm the co-founder and chair of the Senior Housing and Healthcare Association. And indeed, like already mentioned by Sylvia in the intro, I think longevity is one of the key topics. That's also the reason why we have created this strategic partnership with the team of NICA. So yeah, I'm really delighted to have this deep dive on longevity because it will be one of the main focuses of this year's agenda for the SHHA.
Great, thanks very much. And Nick, over to you, because you're going to pick up a little bit on longevity and pick up on some of the key themes. And it will be interesting as well to have your questions for everybody who's joining the live stream. On the right-hand side, as you look at the screen, there will be a Q&A area. So please put your questions, your views into that, and then we'll be able to share those and pick up on your thoughts as well. Over to you, Nick.
Thank you so much, Richard, and thanks everyone back again to be with us this morning or afternoon, wherever you are. So briefly, I'll just go through, let me say, an overview about what is happening on the space of aging and longevity, why we keep on saying it's an opportunity, and it's an opportunity for the return on investment of many organizations, but mainly, as been said before, also a return on society. That's what I think we should have to focus a lot of our energies. Just to briefly set the stage, just to let you know, by 2050, there will be 31 countries, including China, which has the same percentage of the older adults of Japan today, which I think it's something that allows you to understand, not from a bare number perspective, but what is happening at the local, let me say, regional level. I think there is one thing that I really would like you to take away today, just thinking about there is one country, which is China, that by 2050 will have almost 500 million of people over 60. Already today, there are more 250 million. So my first suggestion is just to keep an eye on what's happening in China, because there's a lot of accelerations in the innovation about healthy longevity, which is happening in that country. If we look from a broader perspective, a bigger perspective, I think it's time that we start looking at how humanity is going to shape. And the 2 billion over 60 is expected by 2050. I try to give a sort of a size of the planet. I'm sure I didn't do it correctly, but at least allows you to think there will be a 2 billion of this population around us that will be over 60. Now, we got to this point because in the last 50 years, basically, we have gained, let me say, 20% of life expectancy every 10 years, meaning that I think we did pretty good. And the reasons why we've been able to do such a big achievement is just related to many factors, education, sharing, obviously the research and medical advantages. But I think there is important also to figure out what the last statistics are telling us. So there is a quite interesting paper that came out quite recently, which is somehow showing that we're not going any farther in terms of life expectancy. It's interesting because it's just analyzing the current data, but it's just not making a projection of what are all the forthcoming innovations. And I'm sure that later Han will tell you a lot more about what AI can do and can help us. So there is an acceleration of research that doesn't allow us to understand exactly what's happening in the future of our, let me say, life expectancy. What I think it's important is start to look in not necessarily at life expectancy, but healthy life expectancy, because it's where we would like to live our future lives, staying healthy as long as we can to enjoy life, enjoy society, contribute to society. Let me say 3 things that anyway we have learned through this journey, that we are mainly aging in better health. In general, it's happening almost everywhere. There is no standard aging process. Each one of us in this call, in this meeting today, we are all aging in a different way. So I think it's important that, again, you don't have one recipe to live healthier, longer lives. Each one of us has his own. And finally, we understood that aging is a far more, much more malleable process of what we have thought before, meaning that we can do a lot to influence our process of aging. All this is leading from, I think, the second point that I really would like you to bring with you today, which is shifting from what we have intended as an aging society to a longevity society. I think the change is quite interesting because it allows you to understand that it's not simply the planet which is getting older, but it's also living for longer, meaning that there's a lot of implication about our life, a lot of ideas that we had about our future should have to be seen probably in a different perspective. Also understanding that longevity is influenced all over the life course. So it's not a matter of only looking what is happening in later life, but it's a matter of understanding all along our course of life, what is happening to help us shaping this type of trajectory of life that could help us living healthier, longer lives. Now, I think the topic of today, it's try to understand what are some of the implications. So I try to pick some perspective that we're observing at the National Innovation Center for Aging, so that you could see what could be the nuances that maybe sometimes we tend not to see. Let me say the first one is that we're changing as humans, as people. We have an idea about who are the older adults, and I think it's time that we start looking around ourselves and seeing ourselves as part of those older adults, and ourselves, how different we are from who we were in the past. So there's a lot of preconception. There's a lot of ageist narrative that allow us to think that be young, it's a nicer things versus being old. I think it's time that we start looking from a different perspective on how society is changing, how we can include ourselves in that play. And first of all, stop thinking that it's them. It's not them, it's us who are aging. The second, I think, from a bare housing perspective, is that the composition of the demographic is changing. Literally, it's the first time in humanity that you have 5 generations start living together, doing grocery shopping together, voting together. It's something that never happened before. So as a humanity, we don't have an experience of what's going to be the future. And we are all called to work towards this future. But I think it's important that we start looking also how we are changing as a society. So it's not only an individual play, longevity, but a societal play that allow us to understand what could be the interesting implication of redesigning things that never happened before. For example, in the American society, as you could see from this slide, this is leading to something different. And I think it's quite important to quote some things that we are observing. So for example, here you have 3 examples of communities who come together, not simply to buy a home or just go somewhere to live together, but literally they have built a village where to live together, which I think is quite interesting because there is sort of a real estate revolution on how all the providers of both design, infrastructure, the real estate per se, but also financial services could intercept desires of people that are tending to live in a completely different way, thanks to the fact that they would like to be surrounded by people that sustain them in later life. It's also changing the idea of the retirement facilities on how we envision them. There's a lot happening in the space of what has been defined as longevity buildings, so that there are places where people are living healthier for longer, supported by a layer of services that are becoming more and more usual for people in our stage of life compared to what it was before. You have heard about the concept of blue zones, I'm sure. I think it's a kind of an old idea for us looking for the sacred graal for living forever or for longer. Why we should have to look for places where we can live longer? Can't we shape them? And I think it's part of the discussion I hope we will have later about the work we've done in creating cities that are helping us living healthier and for longer. So it's not a matter of looking places where this thing is already happening. Can we build these places? Yes, we can. And it's part of, I think, the discussion we will have later. Few other things. It's something related to time. If you're going to live longer, we will have more time that we could spend for many things. I just picked the leisure time, and look how much people over 55 will have a contribution in terms of, or an availability, sorry, in terms of leisure time in the future. It's basically 50 trillion hours of leisure times to fill up to 2050. If we're just living in context, probably we also have to look at the shift in priorities. And this is a provocation that I literally seen myself, both living in Boston and in California, where somehow you need someone that's bring your dogs out, but sometimes we live so isolated and separated that you have to invent new services. Just for example, Chuck McCarthy that decided to develop what is called a people walker. And finally, we also have to look what are the new investment epicenters. If California obviously still is the place where a lot happening in the space of healthy longevity, there are new geos, they are stepping in. And one for sure is Saudi Arabia that has decided to invest $1 billion for the next 10 years, but they also change already this type of investment. It will be $1 billion forever, every year, in exploring innovation in the space of biology of aging. So finally, where's the opportunity? For sure, it's in the $118 trillion that somehow several economic players have framed as the broad opportunity with a growth rate that you see here. But let me say it from a different perspective. It's also in our own future. And I think the Los Angeles fires of the last days somehow told us how much we need it. Thank you.
Great, really interesting, Nick. Thanks for that. Lots to pick through, I think. Lots of interesting ideas there. Certainly the idea of 50 billion hours of leisure is quite an interesting one.
Yeah.
And again, a reminder for anybody, do please put in any questions into the chat, and we'll make sure we pick those up. There's a few things that kind of makes me think, and interesting to pick up ideas from anyone on these. But how do you think the shift from an aging society to, you mentioned there, to a longevity society, how does that reshape the senior housing market, designing spaces, architecture, and obviously the broader real estate industry? So I don't know if anyone wants to start on that one.
I'm happy to start with that. I think somehow it's based on two things that I hope you have seen through the slides I presented before. It's where we want to live, and with whom we want to live, and how we want to live, which are quite normal questions, but I think we have to completely reshape it in the perspective of thinking to add 10, 20, maybe 30 healthier years to our life in terms of sustainability, in terms of what we want to take advantage of what kind of a society we would like to be in, what kind of friends we would like to have around us, what kind of neighborhoods, what kind of spaces, services. I think it's something that is touching every industry, but probably this is one of the core industries. And I know Mark has done a lot of work on this space, and that was a pleasure to work with him, thinking about the future of ourselves in perspective, which forces us to think not only in the present terms, but try to envision a future that we had no idea before. And from our experience, we're seeing every single industry raising up and understanding that it's happening to every industry. So it's not related, let me say, to the classical medical healthcare or retirement industry only. And again, I think real estate is one of these, but it's literally touching the environmental factors, mobility, entertainment. There's no one industry that is not somehow impacted by this shift which is happening.
Okay, good. It'd be interesting to pick up your view there. Mark, feel free to come in, but also Francesco, from that point of view of designing those spaces, I think would be interesting.
Yes, I think so. I see the same transition from aging to society to longevity society is totally reshaping how, under my point of view as an architect and as an urban planner, the way we are designing spaces, the way we are thinking about spaces. Is I had the opportunity to see the Barcelona experience, and it's clear that we are working in new home models, and also the continuity with the home models, housing models, and the public space. There are a lot of interesting cases, best practice in Barcelona. We can see for example, the social housing model and the relationship with the public space. But in general, I think it's important to highlight the changing demand. So we are moving from housing that provides services to spaces that foster engaging communities, foster healthy spaces, and also leisure, as Nico said before. And this represents also a different approach in our job, because we are looking more at the experience of the people that lives in spaces, and also it's very important because we can look at the difference between the different countries. Something that is also very important, because we growing all in a different way in the south of Europe or in the north of Europe. And also this has also relationship with the design innovation we can have in the housing sector, technologies we can provide in housing. But so I think there are a lot of form to reshape the models, and we need to insist in this field.
And Mark, feel free to pick that up if you want, but it will be interesting also, I think, because we have got the benefit here of having kind of different perspectives. Just some of the lessons that you've learned, what strategies should guide future developments, particularly when we're looking at senior housing. So I'm happy to start with you on Mark, and any view you've got on the first question as well.
Yeah, so for context, the work we did with the UK's National Innovation Centre for Ageing had a mixture of surveys, interviews, group sessions, and we also built a sort of later life housing assessment tool that's had about 6,000 older adults run through it, and it's about to go live with Standard Life, one of the UK's largest retirement financial institutions, as they think about that alongside later life financing options. And we sort of went in with a sort of hypothesis of what we thought we were going to hear older adults come up with in terms of views, and we really had our eyes open in a number of ways. Firstly, of all the people who've sort of gone through our assessment tool and the research, there was probably about 13 different reasons why somebody would be considering to move. And very often it wasn't just one thing, it was multifaceted as to the reasons why people were considering moving. Another aspect was that actually, and this is backed up by research that's done this space, is that whilst people talk about wanting to live somewhere else, very often because of the hassle factor and because just the process, particularly in the UK market, it will be different for Han in the US, where buying and selling a house can happen in 2 weeks. In the UK, you're into months. But also, the fact of the chains of trying to buy and sell houses. Often people don't move house despite saying they want to. And if they are going to move, they often move after a major life event, often negative, maybe a fall, maybe a partner passing away, maybe illness, but sometimes positive, like a grandchild coming up. And then when you dig into the reasons why people might move, there's so many different layers, and I won't name them all, but just to give you a sense as to the detail of how our assessment goes into, there's family, right? There's where your kids live. Are you close to their kids? Are the kids settled? Do you have grandkids? There's safety and security of both the home, and also, Nick has talked a lot about the neighborhood, but neighborhoods change. Do you have enough social environment? Are the shops there? Are the shops closing down? The post office? Are the banks closing down? Public transport, which often changes as well. Then you've got the sort of social aspect and isolation. If you stop driving, maybe that changes the dynamic of where you are. Steps in the house, downstairs showers, garden, is it too big to manage? All of these things factor in, and it's never one of these things that's the core reason why people move. So it's very difficult for people to unpick this and structure this decision in their own head. And the underlying thing is, and if you only remember one thing that I say today, is that this decision is emotional. Often people have lived in a home and their grandkids have crawled on the kitchen for the first time, or they've had 30 years with their partner in a home. That will often drive a decision about people staying above and beyond everything else. That's a lot of the findings that we found in our research.
Yeah, no, really interesting, I think, Mark. Hannah, it would be interesting to pick up with you if we can. I mean, obviously your work champions the shifting perceptions of aging. You mentioned that, and that we should be, celebrating this, and also, but still looking at innovation very clearly with this.
Sure.
I'd be interested just to see, do you think society is embracing this transformation? Where are we at the moment? Are there early adopters, for example? Is it mainly 50 plus? Is it retirees? What's the situation, Han?
Well, in terms of, I want to add something to what Nick just said. Here, there's research done to University of Florida. It uncovers something that's very striking. While 76% of people have positive views about older adults, but only 57% believe society isn't showing enough proper respect. So the gap tells us something that's important, where we are and where we need to be. And this is what I see the three shifts in terms of in the market. The first one is the evolution from traditional old folks' home, like what was said, to vibrant living communities. And second, innovative spaces like the North Carolina Center, where there's art, wellness, and multiple generations that come together. And then third, there's a growing public interest that demonstrates by having programs like Netflix Old People's Home for 4-year-olds. So technology is transforming these spaces through innovative, intuitive smart home solution, seamless health monitoring, family connection tools that enhance, never replace the human bond. So what drives this interest and success? Well, I believe there's 4. One is independence, which is the foundation. Second is a community at the core. Third, technology is the enabler. And then fourth, dignity. That's the guiding star. So we're not building homes, we're creating communities where generations connect naturally and technology simplifies life and independence flourish. Now, in terms of my biggest lesson is that technology must serve people, not the other way around. So recently, last week at the CES, NVIDIA demonstrated AI's remarkable potential. Their systems that truly understand human behavior and adapt accordingly. Well, here's what's interesting. There's 3 critical lessons. You start with the resident's experience and create spaces that adapt and grow and use technology to strengthen but never replace human connection. So I think that's really important. You got to build that trust and expand the capabilities based on the community's needs.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point. Francesco, let's just come to you. I mean, obviously, in terms of inclusive design, your experience there, you know, where you've got to consult for both public and private sectors, do you think this longevity concept is really gaining traction in terms of housing solutions for older adults? What's the situation?
Yes, I think so. That living in Barcelona, as I said, I see for the first time maybe the public sector going in advance with respect to the private sector. Something is curious, and it's not the rule, which I know. They proposed 20 years ago, a social housing model called vivienda dotacional. It's like a hybrid model that when they mix housing for people that are 65 years old, and put in the same building public spaces like libraries, different civic centers, and also services for the residents and the housing itself. So I think it's going to have attraction for the both sectors, and so I think it's important and to highlight this model have already 20 years, and it's possible to give some consideration. The first consideration we can have from this model is they prepare a model when they think about it to have a population that are 65 years old, but really the population that live in this model is 78 years old, and they have their own independence, and they are very satisfied. They have a very highly rate in order to satisfaction in this model. So it's quite interesting because we imagined 20 years ago to create a specific model for 60 years older, and then we have a model when we live older adults, autonomy adults, 78 years old, and the other and it's important also because was like a attractor for the private sector, and because this model was studied, for example, to the Italian Foundation, Social Housing Foundation, and so it's like a best practice. Was like a best practice, and has this contagious in other countries. Yes, so I think it is. Maybe it's important to insist about this point that cross section section sectors, so the public sector or the private sector can tractor the other to the new real estate in housing, in senior housing.
Okay, good. And often in a lot of the discussions that we're running across these things, it comes down to, what in practice does this actually mean? So, Nick, I'm interested to get anybody else's views on this, particularly looking at the City of Longevity program. Does it make changes in terms of the concept for housing design, community planning? So I suppose, what are the practical changes that people need to be thinking about in terms of when they're looking to build this kind of community, build the kind of the housing that's needed, really?
Well, I think it's a paradigm shift, which I think that's what we somehow are telling all together at the point. I guess there is literally, we're coming to a paradigm shift. First of all, we can't keep on thinking and designing and offering things the way we did before. We are being very reactive. So something is happening and then we do something. Typically, age-friendly cities from the WHO, which is a fantastic program, but it's somehow waiting a city to get older and then adapt the city to a population which is becoming older, which I think requires a different perspective. That's exactly what we suggested. Can the city, instead of being passive, become active and become the player that helps somehow change the communities, the lifestyles, the behaviors, the societal factors? Please do not forget the life inequalities that you can experience in every city. In London, you have a difference of 11 years of life expectancy between Tower Hamlet and Chelsea, and literally they touch each other for an inch, but meaning that you could see literally from one side to the other how people is living healthy, longer life. And it's due to several factors related, societal factors, education factors, behavioral factors on top of this one. So I think it's a time that the cities become something slightly different, because otherwise we keep on thinking about gentrified areas, and that's what Mark somehow was just saying before. The neighborhoods are changing, but then it's a kind of a replica of things, of services for a community, or let me say a demographic that is changing, is probably not exactly the same as before. Also, there is a lot of national factors, cultural factors. For example, there are countries, obviously Italy is one of these, where basically I think there is a study that suggested that over 60 or 70% of the people over 70 as a relative at the distance of 1 mile. It's very different as a scattered society like the United States, for example, where typically younger members of the family leave very early, and then families are all over the country, while in some countries, Europe obviously, mainly communities, societal communities, has a very, let me say, bounded one to each other. The third is about the fact that we have to reinvent the models, I think. The charts I showed before about not people buying a house, but citizens building a village, which again, it's something quite strange if you think in terms of numbers, but we have 3 examples and we start counting this idea. So it means that there's a lack of an offering on how places should have to be shaped, first of all. And second is, again, I go back to the point, it's Mark said it before, who do you want around yourself? And again, who you really would like to live your life if you don't have something that somehow resemble on what are going to be your desire or needs. And again, I think there's a core element about emotional factors. I think Hans said before about some principle, dignity, independence. I think the word autonomy versus independence is probably more important. We tend to promote independence always as a good thing, or be independent. But question to all of us, is a society, an independent society. We need each other. I need you to do this talk today. And we're working together. So I think if we bring back the value of being interdependent, and that's how you build communities, I think it's something that maybe could help us support the idea that we can be autonomous in our life, but dependent by services, by others, by architecture, by things around us. I think it's a suggestion on how we can probably design for the next humans we're becoming.
I think that's interesting. Ron, it'd be interesting to pick up, from your background there in the real estate side. Do you think there are currently enough products and solutions catering to older adults who seek independence, well-being? Should the real estate industry do more to address these needs? Is aging at home still seen as the optimal solution? What's the situation?
No, I think that's also part of the shift in paradigm. It's like that we're moving from a more institutionalized one-size-fits-all to a more customized market where we need to develop a variety of facilities. And I think there's a big differences in terms of affordability. There are big differences between cities and rural areas. And even within countries, I think based on traditions or family traditions, you need different type of models where it's about co-living models or more like intergenerational or mixed use models. And that's, I think, the biggest challenge because we can't go forward in the way we did it in the past 50 years. So we need different types and also trying to solve the puzzle on a different level. I think that's one of the big topics because when you look at the numbers, it's really a society question. So that's also why we need a variety of facilities. And I do believe that we have different type of consumer groups. And that's also why we need this type of webinars and also do a lot of research on what type of consumers do we see in the later living, let's say, longevity period of maybe 50, 60 years. And I think that's really something we need to delve into.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting point, isn't it? And it would be good to pick up, I suppose, as well, where we see the role here for the private versus, the public, local or national governments. Because there's been different reports like the World Bank one looking at the power of healthy longevity. And while we're talking about longevity on the real estate side, obviously that's appealing to the sort of long-term care, so facilities like nursing homes, and supporting that and home caregivers. But do you think there's going to be this change now for I suppose space between broader innovation in senior living, so across the piece, rather than looking at it in these specific, smaller, more focused areas, and that we do really look at longevity now?
Yeah, I think this is a crucial question. I think when it's about long-term care, let's say more specialized for people with dementia or severe challenges, that will be, let's say, max 5% of the market. So 95% will live at home in resilient cities. And that's also why it's such a society relevant topic. Longevity is not a nice to have, it's an absolute must have discussion, but it's still somewhere in a sectoral discussion, but it's such a relevant interconnected topic that it should be on national television how we're trying to solve this. And then that's also the reason why from a SHA point of view, we're giving a lot of attention because we need to speed up and it's not about them, it's about us, and it's about not about tomorrow, but it's about today. So that's really my one line for the audience.
And I'd be interested to get perspectives from everyone as well around, I suppose, do you see this as a public sector, private sector? How do you see that operating, or is it always going to be a mixture of both? What are your views on that?
Maybe I'll give my 2 cents. So I only know the UK market, so comments only is relating to that. UK market, we have care homes. Some are government funded, some are private. Often that comes into effect when there is a incident that has happened that somebody needs to go into care. Yes, something like dementia may be slowly creeping, but often care may be just because someone's had an injury and needs, 12-hour or daily care. The other part of the market that we have is retirement housing, or IRCs, and often when you look at that sector in the UK, which is sort of purpose-built housing for older adults, often these communities are now becoming much more like hotels in effect, where it's a lot of their brochures about the facilities that they have in them. But actually, when you look at the detail, a lot of the sort of occupancy rates of these places are not 100%, despite the demographic shift. And this is often because people don't necessarily want to be in a place where they're surrounded by people their age or older. They want to be in that multifaceted or intergenerational ecosystem. So the government in our country is continually strapped for cash, right? With the demographic bubble that we've got, the assumption that government's going to be able to pick this up is not going to happen. And we're seeing that increasingly, where government pays for care at a lower and lower asset value when in terms of people's net worth. So I think this absolutely has to be driven by the private sector. What I would say is a lot of the stuff that's coming out, because of the development cycles take, lots of years, if not decades, from sort of planning to actually production. I don't think what people are developing now are really what people want to buy. I think there has to be a shift there around something that is much more ingrained within local communities and not sitting off to the side as a older person's retirement location.
So very much in the center, that kind of urban, really part of the community, Mark.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, this also feeds into, rather than just plonking a development there, what is that entity doing for the rest of the community as well? Because some people may want that there, but a lot of people won't. So it has to be some give and take as to what are you doing for the broader community, rather than just sucking up the resources, taking up more local GP issues in terms of that kind of stuff, more hospital visits, and this has to feed through to both ways. Some of the most successful developments I've seen are actually independent villages. So they just build something. None of the brochure, none of the marketing material indicates that this is for older adults at all. Older adults just find it because it's the kind of thing that they want to, the place that they want to live in. But the marketing, all these sort of smiling faces of older adults having fun, it just doesn't work. It doesn't resonate.
Interesting. Good. I'm keen to pick up with you, Han, now on the AI, the innovation side. So it would be good just to pick up, because I know you talked about, an AI revolution in longevity and how that's going to influence the future of care. So it'd be really interesting, I think, to pick up on that point, because we're often looking to the US also to be able to see, I suppose, what we're going to be looking at in the future. So very interested to get your perspectives, Han. So over to you.
So I'll share with you a few slides on the AI revolution in senior living. So let's talk about the future of aging, and picture yourself at 80, active, engaged, living life exactly how you want. So the AI revolution in senior housing is here. It's transforming aging for millions worldwide. So this is how we want to age, with dignity and joy. But here's today's reality. And this is something that will affect all of us. I think Nick mentioned previously, by 2050, we have 2 billion adults that will be 60 or older. And that's not statistics. That's our parents, our loved ones, ourselves. So right now, senior living faces real challenges: growing staff shortages, rising care costs, increasing demand for personalized care, and a need for better safety and monitoring. We're at a turning point. So I'll share with you some important developments here. In the US, Johns Hopkins Hospital has created an AI ecosystem that watches over patients 24/7 like a vigilant guardian. It spots potential health issues early, alerts care teams before problems become serious. helps families get a peace of mind. Now, last week at the CES, NVIDIA showed breakthrough AI capabilities that could transform senior living. Now, while their NVIDIA, their technology focused on a broad AI applications, but here's what this technology could mean to senior housing. Creating smart environmental controls for enhanced safety, automated comfort systems for better living conditions, and enable easier family connections through technology. Also integrating natural wellness monitoring into daily life. So why is this different? Well, this type of AI is very different because it learns each resident's unique patterns, systems that anticipate needs before they arise, and technology that feels warm and personal, not cold and clinical, and the care that adapts to each person's preferences. Think of it like having an attentive concierge who knows your daily routines, anticipates your needs, ensure your comfort, and keeps you connected with your family and friends. So I'm going to go to slide 2. So what are some of the breakthrough AI technology? Okay, so recently, like I mentioned, CES last week, NVIDIA unveiled revolutionary capabilities in their agentic AI and NeMo framework. Again, these were not specifically developed for senior care, but they represent exactly the breakthrough that we've been waiting for. So let me show you how. So this NVIDIA technologies demonstrated 3 game-changing innovations, the new agentic AI that understands and responds like a thoughtful human. It learns continuously from every interaction, processes information more like a human's mind. It adapts its responses based on context and needs. Their NeMo framework and the Llama neutron models, this processes natural conversations, understands complex situations, and makes connections across different types of information, and it gets smarter with each interaction. Another fascinating feature is that the physical world understanding through their Cosmos platform. So they're trained on 20 million hours of real world videos that understands how objects and people interact. It predicts natural movements and behaviors and learns from real world patterns. Now here's the healthcare industry, how it's already showing promising results with AI. I'll use one example, that's voice understanding in healthcare. In the US, the Mayo Clinic found AI can spot health changes through voice with 82% accuracy. I see it as like a mother knowing something's wrong from her child's voice. And also the Stanford Medical showed this reduced emergency visits by 18%, their voice AI. So that is 1 in 5 hospital visits prevented before they happen. So AI isn't just changing senior living, it's redefining what's possible in longevity. So the opportunity to shape this future, like folks here have mentioned, it's here, it's now, and it's in the buildings and communities that we create. I'll go through a diagram. This kind of captures everything, the essence of what I shared. This is a vision AI-enabled senior living ecosystem, and the key is ecosystem. I'll go through how AI transforms senior living, creating this ecosystem that drives both care excellence and investment value. So basically, at its core, it's the AI ecosystem platform, and now potentially powered either NVIDIA's latest breakthroughs, like I've shared, or the Microsoft Azure AI Foundry platform. It has the intelligent monitoring and learning. It provides predictive insights that spots patterns early. Their intelligence enhances your buildings with smart monitoring, runs 24/7. Safety systems responds instantly and provides an environment that adapts to residents' needs. So this transforming care delivery provides staff with real-time support, provides health patterns can be spotted early, and residents receive personalized attention and gives families a chance to stay connected. So what does that mean? Well, creating measurable value, that's better quality of life, meaning more efficient operations, which leads to strong investment returns. So this connected ecosystem, and I keep saying it's a connected AI ecosystem, means technology enhances the buildings, buildings improve care, and better care drives value. So I think in a nutshell, there is strong potential with AI across the world and senior living, and the results are here through some innovative work done with many corporations and hospitals. So that's my take on the AI-enabled senior living ecosystem.
Yeah, fascinating, Han. I mean, really interesting to see some of those things around health outcomes and how AI can influence that. I'd be interested just to pick up with people on the kind of broader implications of integrating AI technology, AI companions into senior housing. Does anybody have a view on that side of things?
Yeah, maybe me, Richard. I think when it's about also the operational side, I think where it's really a game changer is where it ticks the box of governance. Because I think healthcare operators are also searching for ways in an automatic way to be compliant. And when it's about safetiness and also reporting, I think it's absolutely crucial that we have a transparency, that we have a very automatic way of reporting and ticking the box of governance. And I think I would be very happy to see that, because in the end, that will lower the risk, that will increase, I think, the quality of life discussion, and also will increase the quality of work of people who are working in the operation. So I would be very keen on that one.
And Nick, you wanted to pick that up as well, I think.
Yeah, I think on a couple of things. What I think Hannah showed is so interesting, because I think opens up opportunities about better understanding needs versus desires. We're always focused on the needs of people, not focusing on what they really want. And I guess Mark did such a good example before about the classic marketing on things that not necessarily should have to be designed with that demographic in mind, but more with the desires of people. And I think technologies that can start understanding ourselves and helping ourselves understanding what are the things that matters to us, it's something that we clearly are seeing coming out from this type of conversational. The other point is about matchmaking. I think it's something that, again, we tend to forget about how powerful is the matchmaking about, again, what are your priorities versus what's the offering out there. And I think it's a lot that can be done by leveraging this type of technologies. The third one, it's about the living in place. CES has been mentioned so many times before by Han, so rightly. I remember 3 years ago, Samsung launched the things called Bolly, and finally they're just putting this thing on the market. Basically, it's an intelligent ball that it's going around your house, understanding what's happening and commanding the ecosystem of the house to solve the issues or prevent potential issues. And again, it's another of the billions potential implication we see in the landscape to help us living and probably helping the developers designing better homes. Because my last point is, I think we keep on designing things with a kind of a standardized logic, and sometimes the basic concept of decent homes, and specifically in UK, this is literally an issue where the vast majority of the homes where people in later life is living are not decent, meaning that are lacking the basics where we could live. It's something that we can't even bear imagine while it's out there, which I think it's something that we have to probably think in perspective again, back to the point of what are the basic needs, but also what could be enhanced as desires in perspective of living a longer life, which is something that I guess we're still not considering, because we're still looking the whole frame as it was, not as it will be, or as Ron so well said, as it is, not it will be.
You know, Nick, that's a really great point. I want to add some more in terms of product development, whether it's housing or technology. I see it here too often. We're too focused on the product. We need to be more focused on the consumer, the seniors themselves, right? So have them integral to the development, and just don't hand them a product and expect them know what to use it. So we got a paradigm shift other than the ageism, but we also need to move away from product focus to consumer focus, the seniors themselves, so that we understand their needs, wants, and desires.
I'd be interested to find out, and Han, let's pick that with you first on this. I suppose how do people see that in terms of the use of technology, the advantages of it, but are there concerns then about privacy, about those kinds of areas? You know, is there then a disconnect with the technology, or do people happily embrace it?
Well, I think the privacy and security, those are very crucial. And I believe it comes through education and trust. You might have seen companies like Microsoft, NVIDIA, Meta, and so forth. You know, they're out there in the world educating, providing users at all ages to gain training, free trials, and so forth. So basically, you really have to use the tool and understand and gain trust from it, because you're not going to gain trust because somebody tells you to. And a lot of the tools nowadays, I believe, it is private and it's secured, because the bottom line is these data is yours. It's yours to keep, and it's not to be utilized or shared worldwide. So I believe the companies are doing a pretty good job in educating, providing resources for people to use their tools. So older adults, I believe they need to get out there and use it.
Good. We've only got a few minutes left here. So I just wanted to, I suppose, look at the strategies that can then help foster collaboration between the technology providers, because obviously there is a real positive element to technology. But how do we, foster that collaboration between the providers, the real estate developers, the senior housing operators, of course, so that we can seamlessly implement these AI solutions that we've been talking about here? I don't know whether that's something that you want to pick up, Mark or Nick, for example.
Sure. I mean, I think there is AI is the in our living time is the biggest technology change that has happened. The big technology companies, as Han mentioned, are starting to embed a lot of this stuff in their handsets, right? So for those that have an iPhone, Apple Intelligence is now AI based. Meta is embedding AI solutions in older adults as the fastest growing demographic usage of Facebook. So people will get exposure to these solutions whether they want them or not. Question is whether organizations that face older adults as their target audience have the data infrastructure to make use of AI in the first place. Because actually, you've got to have your data in a place that means that when it's going into large language models, AI models, that actually it's not confusing them, because rubbish in can create rubbish out. So I think that is probably the main challenge today, as to do a lot of these firms have their data in an organization that is sorted. And then the final thing I'd say is we're going to hear more, and privacy's been picked up, but we're going to hear more and more about AI bias going forward. And I think the thing is, if your target audience is mostly older adults, and that is the data going into your large language model, you've got an inherent bias that's going to come out as a result of your results. So people can say they have no bias as an approach, but the data going into this stuff will create bias whether you want to or not.
It'd be interesting, Han, just to pick up from you what you're seeing there in the US, especially in terms of how this is being moved through in terms of collaboration with real estate developers and the operators.
Well, I think global platforms is crucial for knowledge sharing, strategic partnership, and policy development. So ensuring there's conversation between healthcare and also communities, age-friendly spaces and intergenerational programs and so forth. And I think the heart of it is that you want to maintain human connection, protect privacy, and support independence for the users. And I want to add to what Francesco said in terms of data and the model and the bias. AI is not a silver bullet for everything, but it is a powerful tool. It's like electricity that will bring us closer to achieving, let's say, longevity, healthy aging, and so forth. One of the biggest tools that can help us move us closer to achieving our goals. but at the same time, it is imperfect. So the goal is not to come up with a perfect model. It is to train it, to put boundaries around it, and to respond to it readily. Because I don't know if it's possible to have a perfect model, because there are biases.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point. We are actually officially out of time on this one. Really fascinating discussions, I think, about where we're looking at longevity, what that means both in terms of the technological solutions and the innovation. Really interesting to hear that from you, Han, and you, Mark, as well, in terms of some of those solutions that we've got. And Nick, great to get your perspectives there, I think, around what we're seeing, what we're expecting to see, and Ron and Francesco, how that is going to be picked up in terms of the real estate industry, and also what the real estate industry needs to learn, I think, in order to integrate this. So thanks very much to everybody who's been joining the webinar. Thanks very much if you're also watching it on demand, and very much thank you to all of the speakers for sharing your views. Thanks very much, everybody.